I said leave. Do not test my patience. I told you never to come here. Did you think this stunt would change anything? Get out!
Please, how can you be so cruel?
Get out of my compound now! I will not accept this child. Look at you.
They say karma is patient. But let me tell you something. When a man throws his pregnant wife into the streets at midnight to make room for his secretary, karma doesn't wait. It plans. That night in Victoria Island, inside a $12 million penthouse with marble floors and champagne on ice, the most celebrated CEO in Lagos was signing his own death sentence. And the woman he just destroyed, she wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling, because 3 hours earlier, she'd signed papers he knew nothing about. Her name was Folktales Adeyemi, and by morning, he would lose everything. But he didn't know that yet, so he kissed his secretary, ignored his wife's last text, and went to sleep like a king. This is the story of how a discarded wife became the ghost that haunted a billion-dollar empire 5 years earlier. If you had asked anyone in Lagos high society about the perfect couple, they would have pointed to Folktales and Tun Adeyemi without hesitation. She was elegant, graceful, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and sent handwritten thank you notes. The kind of wife who showed up to every business dinner with the right smile, the right dress, the right words that made investors feel comfortable signing million-naira deals. Tun Adeyemi was different. Brilliant, yes. Ambitious, absolutely. But also hungry. The kind of hunger that made him work 18-hour days. The kind that made him skip family dinners to close deals. The kind that made him forget anniversaries because a contract was more important than a date circled in red on a calendar. Folktales understood. Or at least, she told herself she did. When they met at the University of Lagos, Tun was a computer science student with big dreams and empty pockets. Folktales was studying business administration, daughter of a quiet man who owned a few properties. That's what she always said. A few properties. She never mentioned that those properties included a silent majority stake in one of Nigeria's fastest-growing tech companies. Her father, Chief Olawale Martins, had taught her something important. Never let people know how much you have. Let them see comfort. Yes, but never power. Power makes people nervous. It makes them calculate. It makes them want take. So when Folktales married Tun fresh out of university, she brought love, support, encouragement. She worked alongside him when he started Adeyemi Innovations from their one-bedroom apartment in Yaba. She designed the first logo on a borrowed laptop. She made tea for the first clients when they couldn't afford an office. She was there for every failure, every rejection, every moment when Tun wanted to quit. And when success finally came, when the contracts got bigger, when they moved from Yaba to Lekki, when the one-bedroom became a duplex, when the duplex became a penthouse, Folktales was still there, smiling, supporting, never asking for credit. But somewhere between the second million and the second billion, something changed. Tun started coming home later, started smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, started looking at his phone with a smile that he used to save only for her. And then came Bim, 24 years old, long Brazilian weave, designer bags, the kind of woman who laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny, the kind of woman who leaned too close during meetings, the kind of woman who called her boss by his first name when everyone else said, sir. Folktales noticed. Of course she noticed. A wife always knows when another woman is circling. She tried everything. She dressed better, cooked his favorite meals, planned romantic weekends. But Tun was already gone. His body came home. Yes, but his mind, his heart, those were already in somebody else's bed. And then Folktales discovered something that changed everything. She was pregnant. 7 weeks. The doctor confirmed it when ultrasound had showed a tiny flutter of heartbeat on the grainy screen. Folktales cried. Happy tears. Finally, after 3 years of trying, of disappointment every month, of people whispering, maybe she's barren, behind her back at family gatherings, finally, a baby. She planned how to tell Tun. She bought a small pair of baby's shoes, wrapped them in gold paper, Made his favorite meal, jollof rice with grilled chicken, the way his mother used to make it. Set candles on the dining table. Wore the dress he'd bought her for their anniversary. When Tun came home that night, she was glowing. "I have something to tell you," she said, holding the small box out with trembling hands. He barely looked at it. "Not now, Folek. I'm tired. But Tun is important. It's about us. About our future." I said, "Not now." His voice was sharp, cold, the voice of a man who had already made a decision and didn't want to be bothered with details. She opened the box anyway, showed him the tiny shoes. "We're having a baby," she whispered. The silence that followed was the loudest sound she'd ever heard. Tun stared at the shoes, then at her belly, then at his phone, which was buzzing with messages he didn't want her to see. "Now is not the time," he said finally. "What?" I said, "Now is not the time, Folek. My company is going through a major acquisition. I'm busy. This is just bad timing." Bad timing. That's what he called their child. Bad timing. She should have known then. Should have seen what was coming. But love makes you blind. Hope makes you stupid. And Folek was drowning in both. But what Folek didn't know was that while she was choosing baby names, Tun was choosing between two women, and he'd already made his decision. 3 weeks later, Folek was 7 months pregnant. Her belly was round and heavy, her feet swollen, her back aching. She spent most days in the penthouse alone, preparing the nursery, folding tiny clothes, dreaming about the life they would build. Tun barely came home anymore. When he did, he was distant, distracted, on his phone constantly. Folek tried to talk to him about baby names, about which hospital to use for delivery, about whether they should hire a nanny or she should take maternity leave from the small consulting work she still did from home. He answered in one-word responses. Yes, no, whatever, fine, until that Thursday night, the night everything shattered. Folek was in the bedroom, organizing baby blankets, when she heard the front door open. She smiled, thinking maybe they could have dinner together, maybe talk, maybe reconnect. But Tun wasn't alone. She heard laughter, a woman's voice, high-pitched, familiar. Bam! Folek froze. Her hands clutched a yellow blanket with elephants on it. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Footsteps on the marble stairs. Getting closer. The bedroom door swung open. Tun stood there, bent beside him, her hand on his arm, her smile confident, possessive. "Folek," Tun said, his voice flat. "Pack your things. You have 1 hour." The blanket fell from her hands. "What?" I said, "Pack your things. This is over. Bimp is moving in tonight." Folek looked at the woman, at her husband, at the life she thought she had. "Tun, I'm 7 months pregnant. With your child. Our child." "That baby is my problem," he said, and each word was a knife. "Bimp is pregnant too. 3 months. And I choose her." The room tilted. Folek grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady herself. "You can't be serious. We've been married for 8 years. I helped you build everything." "You helped?" Tun laughed. A cruel sound. "You made tea, Folek. You smiled at clients. I built the empire. Me. And now I'm choosing to share it with someone who actually adds value. I'm your wife." "Not for long. My lawyers will send the papers tomorrow. Now pack, or security will do it for you." She tried to beg, tried to reason, tried to remind him of their history, their vows, the baby that was moving inside her belly even as they spoke. But Tun had already left the room. Bimp stood in the doorway, smiling. "Nothing personal," she said. "But this penthouse looks better on me anyway." 20 minutes later, Folek was on the street. Security. Men she'd known for years, men she'd given Christmas bonuses to, men who'd called her madam with respect. Dragged her suitcases to the curb and went back inside without meeting her eyes. The gates closed behind her with a final brutal clang. Folek stood there, 7 months pregnant, in a designer dress that now felt like a costume. She had her phone, her purse, 1 suitcase of clothes, and 47,000 Nigerian nairas in her account. all that was left after Tun had frozen the joint accounts that afternoon. She tried calling her friends, the women she'd hosted at tea parties, the couples they'd vacationed with in Dubai, the business associates who'd eaten at her table. No one answered. By midnight, she was sitting under the Falomo Bridge, next to a woman selling oranges who looked at her with more kindness than anyone in her former life had shown in months. Rain started to fall, soft at first, then heavy, soaking through her silk dress, mixing with her tears. The baby kicked inside her as if asking, "What now, Mama? What now?" And that's when Folake remembered. As Folake sat on that cold concrete, rain soaking her designer dress, she remembered something her late father told her on her deathbed, something she'd kept secret for 15 years. And in that moment, everything changed. Her father had died 5 years ago. Lung cancer, quick and brutal. In his final days, when the morphine made him lucid in strange waves, he'd called her to his hospital room. "Folake," he'd whispered, his hand gripping hers with surprising strength. "I need to tell you something about Tech Vision Nigeria." Tech Vision was a tech company everyone in Lagos knew. They provided software solutions to banks, oil companies, government agencies. Growing fast, worth millions, maybe tens of millions. "What about it, Papa?" "I own it," he'd said. 60%. Through shell companies, offshore accounts. Structure so complex even the tax people can't trace it. "And now you own it." She'd stared at him. "Papa, I don't understand." "I've transferred everything to you, under your maiden name. Martins, not Adeyemi. No one knows. Not your husband. Not your mother. No one. I did this to protect you." "Protect me from what?" He'd looked at her with eyes that had seen too much of the world. "From men who love what you give them more than they love you. Promise me something, Folake. Never tell anyone about this until you need it. And when you need it, use it wisely." She'd promised, and then she'd forgotten. Or rather, she'd chosen not to remember, because her marriage was happy. Her life was good. Why would she need secret millions when she had love? Now, sitting under a bridge in rain, 7 months pregnant and homeless, she remembered her father's words with perfect clarity, and she started to laugh. Not from joy, from the bitter irony of it all. Because 3 hours before Tun threw her out of the penthouse, Folake had signed papers her father's old lawyer, the only person besides her who knew the truth, had been begging her to sign for months. Papers that finalized the sale of Tech Vision Nigeria to Adeyemi Innovations for $50 million. Tun had been chasing that acquisition for 2 years. Tech Vision would make him a dominant player in the Nigerian tech space, give him government contracts, make him untouchable. And he'd gotten it. Paid $50 million from loans, investors, every resource he could leverage. What he didn't know was that he'd bought it from his own wife. What he didn't know was that buried in the contract, Clause 7, subsection B, on page 47, in language so dense that even lawyers' eyes glazed over, was a provision that said if the buyer engaged in fraud, breach of contract, or moral misconduct within 90 days of the sale, the transaction would be voided, the assets would return to the seller, and the buyer would forfeit all payment. Folake stood up from that concrete, rain still falling, and made a phone call. "Mr. Becker," she said to her father's lawyer, "I need somewhere to stay, and I need you to start documenting everything. Clause 7, subsection B, buried on page 47, stated that if the buyer commits fraud, breach of contract, or moral misconduct within 90 days, the deal reverses, and the buyer forfeits everything. Everything. The next 3 months were the longest and shortest of Folake's life. Mr. Becker put her in a small apartment in Acadia. Nothing fancy. 2 rooms. A kitchen that barely fit 1 person. But it was hers. Safe. Quiet. She gave birth alone. Well, not entirely alone. A midwife was there. Mr. Becker's wife brought soup. But no husband. No family. No friends. When they placed the baby in her arms, a girl, tiny and perfect with full head of black hair, Folake wept. "Your name is Iamide," she whispered. "My joy has come. Because you have, my darling, you have, while she recovered, while she learned to breastfeed and change diapers and survive on 4 hours of sleep, she also watched. Mr. Becerra brought her newspapers, showed her social media. The Lagos gossip blogs were having a field day. Billionaire still divorces pregnant wife for secretary. Tun Adeyemi's new woman, who is Bimp, power couple no more, inside the Adeyemi divorce. But Tun didn't care. He was too busy celebrating. He'd posted photos online. Him and Bimp at the Tech Vision signing ceremony. Him and Bimp moving into the penthouse. Him and Bimp at a beach resort in Seychelles. And then the caption that made Folake's blood boil. New wife, new life, new empire. Some people are meant to help you grow. Others are meant to be left behind. I chose growth. Hashtag no regrets, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag Adeyemi innovations. The comments section was brutal. What happened to your pregnant wife? His response. She wasn't woman enough for the next level. Some people can't handle greatness. Mr. Becerra showed Folake every post, every comment, every interview where Tun dismissed her as a chapter I've closed. Why are you showing me this? Folake asked, tears streaming as she held Iamide to her chest. Because, Mr. Becerra said quietly, moral misconduct is not just abandonment. It's also defamation, public humiliation, character assassination, and we're documenting everything. Day 89 arrived. Folake sat in Mr. Becerra's office. Iamide sleeping in a carrier beside her. On the desk were 3 binders. Evidence, photos, screenshots, medical records showing she'd been pregnant when Tun threw her out, bank records showing he'd frozen her accounts, social media posts showing his cruelty, and the contract, with Clause 7, subsection B highlighted in yellow. Are you sure? Mr. Becerra asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. Folake looked at her daughter, at the life she lost, at the future she was about to claim. File it, she said. Day 90. Tun Adeyemi sat in his corner office on the 15th floor of the Adeyemi Innovations building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lagos. On his desk was a photo of him and Bimp. She was showing now, for months pregnant, her belly small but visible. Life was perfect. Tech Vision was already generating revenue. The acquisition had been brilliant. His investors were happy. His bank account was growing. And Bimp? She was everything Folake wasn't. Fun, spontaneous, young. His assistant knocked. Sir, a courier just delivered this. Marked urgent. He opened the envelope without much interest. Probably another contract. Another opportunity. Another? He stopped breathing. The letterhead was from Martins and Associates Legal Chambers. The subject line, Notice of Contract Breach and Clause Activation, Tech Vision Nigeria Acquisition Agreement. He skimmed the first paragraph. Then read it again. Then again. Pursuant to Clause 7, subsection B, the undersigned has determined that the buyer, Adeyemi Innovations Limited, has engaged in moral misconduct as defined in Section 12C of the agreement, including but not limited to abandonment of a pregnant spouse, public defamation, and willful infliction of emotional distress. His hand started shaking. Therefore, effective immediately, the sale of Tech Vision Nigeria is hereby voided. All assets revert to the seller. The buyer forfeits all payments made. The paper slipped from his fingers. He looked at the signature at the bottom. Folake Martins. Not Adeyemi. Martins. When Tun opened that envelope, his hand started shaking, not because of what it said, but because of who signed it. The name at the bottom was impossible.